Welcome to another edition of Green is Good. Of course, this is the Hollywood Goes Green is Good with Debbie Levin as my co-host today. And today we're so honored to have Rich Roll with us, the ultra endurance athlete, author, and also vegan extraordinaire. Welcome to Green is Good, Rich.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
You know, Rich, you are just someone, I'm so honored that you took some time to be with us today. I've read your book. And I know we're going to talk about another book coming out. But I mean, they talk about the greatest athletes in the world being boxers, Manny Pacquiao or Mayweather. You're the ultra athlete in the world that, doesn't make all the highlight reels on ESPN, but you've done it all.
Well, I don't know if I've done it all, but I've been fortunate enough to excel in one very small little niche of athleticism that not too many people pay attention to. So it was an honor through my book to be able to tell the story and kind of put a spotlight on the beautiful world of ultra endurance sports.
I read your book two years ago, literally this summer, 2 years ago. I read Finding Ultra. Share a little bit about that journey with our listeners who haven't had the opportunity to read that book.
Yeah, sure. So I'm 48 now, but when I was 39 years old, I was a very different guy. I was a corporate lawyer, and I had about 50 extra pounds I was carrying around my midsection. And I was also just kind of not happy with the profession that I was in and kind of having a bit of an existential crisis about my place in the world. And that happened to intersect with a health crisis, carrying around all this extra weight, and heart disease runs in my family. I had an episode late one night walking up a simple flight of stairs at my home where I had to pause halfway up the stairs, winded, out of breath, sweat on my brow, buckled over, and I had the fear of God in me. I thought I might be having a heart attack, and it kind of snapped my denial about the way that I was living my life, this hyper-stressed lifestyle. I was subsisting on a diet that I call the window diet. If you can drive your car up to a fine dining establishment and roll the window down and they hand you food, that's what you eat. And
you kind of need to really talk about that, because I think too many people are on that window diet in this country.
I've never heard of that till just now.
That's an amazing term. I'm sorry, go on.
Sure. Burgers, French fries, nachos, Taco Bell, Carl's Jr., you name it. Like, that's how I was eating and living for the better part of my adolescence and adulthood. And my mom would always say to me, heart disease runs in our family, you got to watch out. Her father, who I'm named after, was a champion swimmer when he was in college. I swam in college as well. Was an Olympic hopeful, an American record holder, the captain of the University of Michigan swim team, like a contemporary of Johnny Weissmuller and the great swimmers of that era.
The original Tarzan.
Exactly. And was never overweight, never smoked, continued to stay fit and swim his whole life, but he died of a heart attack at age 54 when my mom was still in college. And so, of course, I never had the opportunity to meet him. And when you're young and your mom says, you got to watch what you're eating, you're like, what, yeah. But, by 39, it really had caught up to me. And that moment on the staircase really snapped everything into focus for me and made me realize not only that I needed to change how I was living, but that I actually wanted to. I had the willingness to make some real significant changes.
And get off of the window diet.
Got off the window diet. I played around with a bunch of different diets to no avail until I kind of stumbled haphazardly into eating a plant-based diet.
That's amazing. And for our listeners out there, that are on the window diet. Rich, you were a lawyer. You were a Cornell, Stanford guy. So the window diet isn't a socioeconomic thing.
No.
It
is for a lot of people.
It is for a lot of people, but in terms of education, and
it
brilliant.
Sounds like you should have known better.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, thank you,
Debbie. Right.
Well, that's an important issue, I think, because dietary choices don't necessarily have to do with the intellectual mind. I think in retrospect, looking back, I'm also a recovering addict and alcoholic, and I think I got sober when I was 31. But I think between 31 and 39, I kind of transferred a lot of that, addict mentality onto my dietary choices. And I think, it's very easy to kind of throw around the word, addicted, I'm a chocoholic. We do it very cavalierly, but I think it does warrant our attention to kind of really discuss food addiction, because I think it is,
it's real,
an epidemic. And I think when you look at, how some of these processed foods are made, and and specifically scientifically tested and devised, there's a lot of money and marketing dollars behind, getting people hooked on these foods that are not good for us. And it does transcend, our knowledge base or our intellectual, capacity to know better.
Oh, I'm sorry. And all the information that you're getting from everywhere about healthy food choices and eating locally and eating naturally, was that just sort of not penetrating at all?
Not really.
Clearly.
My wife was trying, believe me. My wife is the healthy one in our relationship equation, and I always joke that at that time, if you were to open up our refrigerator, there was a pretty clear demarcation line down the middle between the foods that she was eating, the foods that I was eating, and she was always trying to, she could see the better version of me, inside, behind the thickness. And by thickness, I don't mean physical thickness. I mean, like, she could just see the heaviness. And she tried for a long time, like, why don't you try this? Why don't you read this book? And I'm like, yeah. And I think that goes to, this issue of trying to, like, compel people to change. It's like, you got to want to change. You got to be in that place where you're really ready.
Right.
For our listeners who haven't had the opportunity to read your first amazing book, Finding Ultra, it culminates with a huge event in Hawaii. Can you just share what you accomplished in Hawaii?
Yeah, sure. So adopting this plant-based diet really kind of revitalized me. It repaired my health, and it gave me this tremendous resurgence in vitality that I could have never predicted. My whole life I've been told, oh, you need to eat meat for strong muscles if you want to be an athlete, and you have to drink milk for calcium for strong bones, and beef is what's for dinner, and milk does a body good, and all these things. So the idea that suddenly I was removing those products from my diet and feeling better than I ever had was a very disorienting but also exhilarating experience, and that gave me so much energy that I started to get out and try to get fit again, almost because I couldn't sit down. And that kind of set me on this new trajectory where I became very aware of how resilient the human body is, because I'd abused myself with drugs and alcohol and the window diet and corporate law firm lifestyle for so long, and in a very short period of time I had become a very different person. I shed the weight, I had all this energy, and I wanted to challenge myself and see, wow, if I could repair my body so quickly, what am I actually capable of? What if I really tested myself? What could I achieve? And that's what kind of launched me into ultra endurance sports and got me fascinated with that world.
Which is what? What? Explain that.
It means whether it's running or triathlon races that are super long. Everybody's heard of an Ironman.
Right.
An Ironman's a super long triathlon. It takes you all day to do it. Well, I do like multiple day races. I do this race called Ultraman, which is a 3-day double Ironman triathlon that circumnavigates the big island of Hawaii, which is a big island. It's about the size of Connecticut. And in 2010, I did something with a friend of mine that no one had ever done, where we did 5 Ironmans on 5 Hawaiian islands in under a week. So
in 7 days.
Ironman race every day on a different Hawaiian island until we were done.
And just for our listeners out there that don't know what an Ironman is, just lay it out.
Right. So an Ironman is a very long triathlon in which in the period of one day you swim 2.4 miles and then you get on your bike and you ride your bike 112 miles, and then you celebrate that by then running a marathon.
He did 5 in 7 days.
So I did 5 of those in a row.
Okay, so I have a girl question.
Uh-huh.
You went from this person to this person, this extreme person to this extreme person.
Right.
How did that look with your wife?
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
I think that when I started training, I was trying to answer questions for myself about who I was. So in many ways, although it's the sort of fitness and physical aspects of what I've accomplished that kind of, get the headlines, for me, it's always been a spiritual journey. And my wife is a very spiritually oriented person. And she was able to see that I needed to do this to figure out who I was. And it was a difficult time. We had many challenges. We were going through some financial stuff. The economy was not doing well. It was very, very difficult. And there were plenty of dark moments of the soul where I would turn to her and say, why am I doing this? Like, I should be spending more time putting food on the table. And my friends would tell me I was crazy. And she would look at me and she would say, no, you need to get out and train. I don't know why, but this is going to lead you somewhere. I believe in that. And so it was really this tremendous capacity that she had, this belief that she had in me, and it really allowed our relationship to become much closer, much more intimate, and together we kind of were really living this more faith-based way of living, where there was this idea that this could lead to a different direction. I wasn't doing it so that someday I could sit down with you and be on GreenIsGood radio. That's a bizarre experience, because I was doing this in obscurity. But she knew that I needed to do this for myself, that this was a way of me answering these questions and kind of tapping into a greater self-awareness and really a means of trying to express a more authentic version of who I was.
So that's like the best sort of ending of the story, not ending,
Right.
but, you know, that's the best scenario, because you were able to do this together authentically for, you know, each other in a sense.
For
Because
sure.
you gave to her what the best gift, which was you.
Right. She was able to then get the husband that I think that she initially saw when she met me.
Right, right.
And you have also 4 children.
I do, yes. It's a busy
So
house.
where are they
Yeah,
in
yeah,
all of this?
They've been amazing.
How old are they?
We run the gamut. Our oldest is 20, and we have the two older ones are boys, 20 and 18. Then we have 2 girls that are 7 and 11.
So the older ones really have seen you
Yes.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And what are they like? Who are they?
They're amazing kids. We homeschool all our kids, which is a whole other thing.
From the beginning or not?
Well, the 2 older boys went through the system until the last couple of years of high school, and the little girls have pretty much been homeschooled from the get-go. The older boys are musicians. They have a band. They're filmmakers. They're very creative. My wife is the artist, and she kind of sets the tone for creative expression in our house. And I think that, you know, the message that I try to put out there, and I think that at least the older boys, because they're aware enough at this point, really have intuited into their lives, is that, you know, life is short and you should pursue your dreams. And our job as parents to these children is to try to help them identify what it is that they want to express and support that. And so right now with the boys, it's music, and they're getting ready to record their first album, and, you know, we have a lot of cool stuff going on at home around that.
That is awesome. You know, for our listeners who just joined us, we're so honored. Debbie Levin and I, my co-host and good friend, who is the president of Emma, have Rich Roll with us today. And Rich is not only a vegan evangelist and an author, he's also a podcast host, and he has almost 6 million downloads on his podcast, which you can find at what? richroll.com.
Richroll.com is the best place. You can find it on iTunes and anywhere that people listen to podcasts.
Amazing. I mean, almost 6 million. I mean, you could be writing a whole nother book on social media. I mean, it's almost 6 million downloads.
It's been a crazy journey.
I mean, for our listeners out there, you know, we talked a little bit about at the top of the show, Finding Ultra, but the really good news is that you and your wife, Julie, now have a book coming out. Called The Plant Power Way. Talk a little bit about the evolution from Finding Ultra to the Plant Power Way and what's going to be in the Plant Power Way.
Yeah, sure. So Finding Ultra was really my memoir. It was my story.
Right.
And, you know, it's a family journey, of course, and that's part of Finding Ultra, but really we wanted to find a way to kind of express, you know, what we've experienced on a more family-oriented level. And, you know, as much as Finding Ultra was a story of kind of athletic pursuits and this kind of spiritual journey, and it certainly contained plenty of information about nutrition and how to perform as an athlete on a plant-based diet, it was not a cookbook, you know. And so the question we get all the time is, well, all right, I get it, I'm on board, like I'm inspired, so tell me what I eat now. So,
right.
So that begged the question of, okay, well, I think it's time to do a cookbook. And you know, my wife and I went to Barnes & Noble, we looked at all the cookbooks, we got all the vegan cookbooks, we're looking through them, and I'm thinking, there's so many amazing vegan cookbooks out there, plant-based, you know, nutrition cookbooks. You know, if we're going to do this, what is it that we can bring to this that's different or has not yet been expressed? And what I noticed was that I didn't really see a book that spoke to just typical modern American families, whether you're vegan or paleo or whatever diet you're on. Just, you know, the average parent who's thinking, yeah, I want to be healthier. You know, I don't know about vegan, maybe, but, you know, I know I need to eat more plants in my diet. And how can I get my kids off the mac and cheese and the Cheetos and all of that? How can I create better lifestyle habits for my family in general to make better choices? And so that was really kind of the marching orders for the Plant Power Way. So Plant Power Way is a cookbook. It's got about 120 amazing delicious plant-based recipes, but they're all very easy to prepare. There's nothing precious about them. They're all like super fast and very hearty, and it's really it's not like we went out and partnered with some chef. I mean, my artist wife, Julie, these are the recipes that she developed when I began this journey. And she had to figure out, okay, how am I going to feed this guy who's out training? He's training 30 hours a week. He comes home, he's tired. I got to feed him so that he can wake up the next day and do it again and sate him. But also, I'm not spending all day in the kitchen. I got to create something that my kids are going to eat too.
Right.
And that was the equation that she was trying to solve. And so the recipes that are in the book are all very authentic to how we live and how we eat. They're very family friendly, and the idea is that they are going to be satisfying to anybody, whether you're an ardent carnivore or your crazy uncle who's coming over for Thanksgiving. The idea is that this is just delicious. And above and beyond that, most cookbooks are just recipes. They're recipe books.
Right.
And I would say almost more than 50% of this book is lifestyle guidance. It's opinion pieces, it's tools, it's resources, it's all of this additional educational information about how to transition into a more plant-focused way of eating. So long opinion pieces and articles about where do you get your protein and how can I get my kids more interested in healthy eating, and is it important to buy organic, and what is this business about GMOs and gluten and all these kinds of things that we hear about, but most people are too busy to go home and go on the internet and really spend time researching it. So we wanted to make this very accessible, and in kind of throughout the book, sharing our family journey. So there's a lot of incredible lifestyle photography. It's a very beautiful book. It's a book that you could leave out on the coffee table that anybody can enjoy just kind of paging through it. And a book that I think not only that you would use every day, but that I really think has the power to change people's lives.
Next time when you come back on Green is Good with Debbie and I, we want you to bring
books.
We want books.
I'll bring you books.
We want books. We want Julie, and we want you to
Yeah.
bring one or two of your favorite recipes so we can eat right here
We're
on
going to do
camera.
a full-on cooking day.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
what we're going to do.
that'd be
Julie would
awesome.
love it.
I mean,
She's the one you got to be talking to.
Good. Well, that's all right. Well, do you talk also about vitamins and yoga and meditation also in terms of is that covered in the book?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I always say is that good health, begins and ends with what's on your plate.
Right.
And even as an athlete, like I can't out-train a poor diet. Your diet has to be dialed in. But I also think that wellness is so much more than diet. People think, oh, well, a healthy diet and I've solved my wellness equation. But the truth is that we need to adopt a more comprehensive approach to what it means to be truly well. And that includes mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, physical health, all of these things. And so, meditation, mindfulness, yoga, these are all parts of, my equation, my wife's equation, our family equation, and that's throughout the book as well.
That's great. And for our listeners out there and our viewers out there, they can buy the book on Amazon.com or at Barnes & Noble or any great bookstore out there.
Yeah, you can pre-order it now. It comes out April 28th, but it's available for pre-order now. In fact, if you go to richroll.com, we have a pre-order page, and we're giving away about $300,000 in pre-order gift incentives, which is exciting, right?
Wow.
We partnered with all these amazing companies that are creating great products, food products, and also, kitchen utensil type products that we use, and they all said, yeah, we want to be part of the Plant Power Way. What do you need? And so it's great to be able to offer that to people and to my podcast listeners and everybody who have been on this journey with us, and say thank you. Not only will you get this great book, we're going to give you all this extra stuff as our way of saying thank you to helping spread this important message of health across the country and the world.
Rich, you've become, with a tribe of 6 million now, you've become a great ambassador and evangelist both for good health, for good living, and like you say, the right kind of lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Where does it go from here? Where does the journey go from here? I mean, because it's, you're still a very young guy. Julie's a young woman. Mm-hmm. Where are you guys going to go with this?
Well, I wake up every morning excited about trying to find new ways of spreading a healthy message. And the truth is, the unfortunate truth is that although people like yourselves and your listeners and my listeners are super interested in healthy living, at the same time, the sort of statistics bear out a very different picture of what America looks like. So right now, heart disease is certainly and remains America's #1 killer. 1 out of every 3 people will die of a heart attack. By 2030, they're estimating that Upwards of 50% of Americans will be diabetic or pre-diabetic. 70% of Americans are obese or overweight. So we have a huge problem on our hands, and there's a lot of work to be done. And so, where I take this from here is trying to double down on my efforts and everything that I can do to try to reverse these trends, because we're in a crisis right now, and we need all hands on deck.
Well, fortunately, messaging is at a high, and with social media and the ability for people to get information and to be influenced by people with a voice has never been in the place that it is right now, and that's a gift.
That's
And
true.
so if you've got logical
Great point.
information, and if you have a relatable story, and you have an amazing relatable story, because you, in a sense, were everybody. Take the corporate lawyer part out a little
Right.
bit, but
Yeah.
you were everybody,
Yeah.
and the fact that you could feel better and be productive and have, you've got a family, it's not like you're like an alone guy doing this in isolation. You actually represent so many families out there, and that you can do this. I think it's an amazing story and an inspiring one, and one that people could relate to. So your voice is so important for this.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I think it's really important that people truly understand that wellness, sustainable wellness, is not an elitist ideal.
Exactly.
I think that's one trend that's kind of happening right now that we need to talk about, because there's this idea that, oh well, I'd love to eat healthy, but I can't afford to eat shop at Whole Foods, and
It's
all
totally
these sort of
changed, though. I
things.
mean, if
And
you think
so-
about it, Walmart is the largest, they sell more organic food than anyone in the world. So it is available. And the more we support, companies that are huge and big corporations that are doing sustainable products, the more they'll be available to everybody. And that's just a reality. So I think that, again, what you're saying is exactly right. I think that it was more elitist 10 years ago when we
Right,
met.
right.
And it is definitely changed because the affordability is changing. And when people can go and they've got like, okay, I can get this product, and this product is kind of the same price, there is no decision. They are choosing the healthier item
Yeah.
if they're given the facts. And again, if they're reading about that, and they're reading about it in social media, and they're reading about it from people whose experiences they can relate to, it's something that we can definitely change the way our future is.
Absolutely.
Rich, we're down to the last couple of minutes, unfortunately, but two questions. It's hard for Michael Jordan or for John Elway to step off the field. You did the ultimate endurance athlete feat. What do you do now in terms of how do you go
How do
for
you
a
top
bike
that?
ride? Yeah, I mean, like, what do you do to get your endorphins going and the adrenaline moving? And what's your day look like in terms of just moving around and feeling that high again?
Yeah, it's that's something that I grapple with every day. There's part of me that fantasizes about, a lot of guys fantasize about going to Vegas and having a big weekend.
Right.
My fantasy is if I could just live in a cabin in the woods, then I could train all day, and that's not my life,
Right.
And again, it goes back to that question of like, how do I be a steward of this message? And
Right.
and I get up every day and I train, but I'm not race fit right now. I don't have the bandwidth or the time to devote to training for another one of those races at this moment, because I have a greater responsibility to steward this message in different ways, like being here with you today,
Thank
as opposed
you.
to being out on my bike,
Thank you.
training for 5 or 6 hours. Now, in a year or two, maybe that's the best way for me to carry the message. I certainly feel like I have more to say and do in athleticism, and there are challenges I'd like to take on. Right now, there's different avenues like podcasting and radio shows and all of the like, and our book coming out. But I still love it, and I get out every day and train, and I'm on the trails. I'm just not doing it. I'm not putting in the crazy hours that I was to get ready for Ultraman, and that goes to balance. Like being well, being healthy is about how you balance all of these things in our life, and everybody is being distracted by so many things, and we're busy and we're stressed and we're just trying to put food on the table. How do you build in healthy practices throughout your day in kind of a sustainable, balanced way? I'm not a very balanced guy, like I like the extreme,
Right.
I like to go all the way to the wall. And for me, the kind of spiritual challenge is how do I still do these things that I love, and be present for my wife and my kids, and still carry this message and all of that. And I wouldn't say that I've solved that equation, but I'm always trying.
You know, last question today, Rich. Best advice. You yourself are considered now a guru, and people are listening to your advice. What's the best advice that you've ever gotten?
The best advice that I've ever gotten is mood follows action. You know, I think that when people are trying to change their lifestyle habits, whether it's, you know, oh, I really should go to the gym, or I really should make the better food choice, a lot of times they say, well, I'll do it tomorrow, or, you know, I'm not up for it right now. You know, maybe when I feel better, then I'll put the running shoes on. And for me, that's my mantra, mood follows action. If I want to change how I feel, I have to take the action first.
Got it.
And when I'm mindful about that, I have more aptitude for making the better choice.
That's awesome. Rich, we're going to have you back. We're going to have you back with Julie with the book here and with some of the recipes. You know, to find more about Rich Roll, go to richroll.com. Download his podcast. Let's get him up to 10 million downloads.
That's right.
I mean, also buy Finding Ultra or his new book, The Plant Power Way, on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble. For Debbie Levin, I'm John Shigarian. We're with Rich Roll. Rich Roll, you are truly living proof that green is good.
Thank you for having me.